The creepiest places in the world. Gate to Hell, Turkmenistan. It's been burning for past 40 years, and no one knows when it's going to stop.
Lake Natron, Tanzania.
Due to high levels of salt contents, everything that touches the lake turns to pure stone.
Surprising facts about every single country in the world, part 31. North Korea doesn't tax its citizens. Argentina once had 5 different presidents in 2 weeks. Bulgaria, no army ever has ever captured the Bulgarian flag in battle. Czechia is the most atheist country in the world. Israel developed voicemail technology.
This mother listened as her daughter was mauled by a bear. On August 2011, a 19-year-old Olga Moskolyova went fishing with her stepfather at a river in the village of far eastern Siberia. This area is known for its significant bear population, and it's home to one of the largest brown bears in the world. On this day, Olga called her mother and told her that she was being eaten by a bear. At first, she thought her daughter was joking, but then she heard the bears growling and chewing, and she realized that this was real. Her mother then called her husband, which is Olga's stepfather, but little did she know he was already deceased. The story is that they were done fishing and were on their way back when they realized that they forgot something. So they walked back to the river and came face to face with a brown bear and her cubs. Olga's stepfather was attacked first, and Olga tried to run away, but the bear caught up to her. While Olga's stepfather was already deceased, the bear came back several times to attack Olga until she was dead. But during the attack, Olga was able to call her mother 3 times, and during this call, she told her that she was being eaten by the bear and her cubs. She then ended the conversation by telling her mother that she loved her. The mother called police, and they arrived to the location in about 30 minutes, and they found the bear still eating her husband's body. Like I said, this area is known to have a lot of bears, so people usually bring protection with them, but it was said that Olga and her stepfather did not.
Facts that will blow your mind. Humans are the only animals that enjoy spicy foods. Potato chips cause more weight gain than any other food. It's impossible to hum while you hold your nose. The least interesting day in history was April 11, 1954. Aldous Huxley and C.S. Lewis died on the same day as JFK. Bigger forks lead you to eat less. The longest living insect is the termite. Chewing gum after a meal reduces heartburn. Dogs can smell cancer. Bees can detect bombs. Follow and comment below which fact blew your mind.
Places that look more creepy at night.
Tiptoe through the window, by the window, that's where I'll be. Come tiptoe through the tulips with me.
I walked out of the theater after seeing Saw X and decided I need more. So here's 3 horror movies you need to watch, especially if you like Saw. First up is this absolutely insane movie called 31, about 5 carnival workers who get kidnapped by crazy killer clowns and forced to play a deadly game called 31. If I had to describe this movie in 2 words, it would be weird and insane. And I mean both as compliments. Next up is a movie I've been waiting to talk about, Dead Silence, which was made by the writers, directors, and producers of Saw. It's about a town with a unique urban legend of a doll maker turned serial killer. It's actually a crime that it has 21% on Rotten Tomatoes. Please watch this and let me know if you agree with me or the critics. I really need to know. And the last movie is also the one that's most similar to Saw, because The Collector was supposed to be John Kramer's origin story, but now it's about a different serial killer who turns different places into traps and collects victims from each of the traps that he makes. I have a whole video dedicated to the Collector series as well, so follow for more.
Here's some of the scariest unknown creatures caught on camera, Part 6. This drone footage captured in the deep parts of the Salt Fork Park in Ohio captures what may be evidence of the elusive Bigfoot. As the drone begins to land, pay attention to the thickets and tell me what you think.
Attention homeowners. I don't know about you, but I've grown tired of that feeling you get every month waiting for the delivery of the electricity bill. Like many of us, I was fed up of the constant price hikes and the feeling of hopelessness when my electricity bill arrived every month. I felt like I had no control over what I was being charged, and I searched all over to find a solution. That's when I decided to take control of my energy costs. I reached out to a consultant at Zephyrtech who introduced me to their T1 Powerwall battery. At first, I was skeptical. Why would I need a solar storage system when I don't even have solar panels? But after a quick 10-minute phone consultation, everything clicked. The Powerwall can be charged at night when electricity is cheap at 9p per kilowatt hour. This means that I can store inexpensive energy at night and use it during the day when the electricity rates are higher. Since installing the Powerwall, my electricity bill has been dramatically reduced even without using solar panels. The service and support team from Zephyrtech has been outstanding. So much so that I decided to take the next step in my renewable journey, and I'm planning to add solar panels to my setup to aim for a zero.
Here's some of the most random fun facts you will ever hear in your life. Armadillo shells are actually bulletproof. One time a man was hospitalized when he shot at an armadillo and the bullet ricocheted off the shell and hit him instead. There's only one letter in the entire alphabet that isn't in any US state name, and that letter is Q. There's not a single state with the letter Q in its name. 71% of the earth is covered in water, and humans can only use 0.007% of that water. 2.5% of the total water is fresh water, and only 1% of that is actually accessible. The bumblebee bat is the smallest mammal in the entire world. These things can rest on your fingertips and you might not even know because they weigh 0.05 to 0.07 ounces. Ostriches are the world's largest and heaviest living bird. It's why they can't fly, but they are built for running, and they can reach speeds of up to 43 miles per hour, and they can pretty easily coast at 30 miles per hour. The longest English word is 189,819,000 letters long. It's a protein and its nickname is titin, and it would take around 3.5 hours to say the word out loud.
He murdered his great-grandmother for $133. In 2012, 13-year-old Antonio Barbo and his best friend Nathan Papp both murdered his great-grandmother in the most horrific way. On that day, Antonio's mother drove the kids to her grandmother's house, 78-year-old Barbara Olson, but she had no idea what they were about to do. The two teens tried to sneak into Barbara's house, but then she heard them, so she invited them inside. Once Barbara turned around, her great-grandson hit her with a hatchet. Barbara was hit 27 times and had wounds all over her hands and arms, indicating that she tried to defend herself. The teen stole Barbara's jewelry along with $155 and then used that money to buy drugs and pizza. They tried to drag Barbara's body into her car, but when they couldn't pick her up, they just left her in the garage. Barbara's body was found 2 days later by her own daughter, and the boys were arrested not long after. Nathan argues that he thought Antonio was just joking about murdering his own great-grandmother, and he only participated because he was afraid that Antonio would turn on him. Antonio's grandmother, who's also the victim's daughter, spoke out and said that her mother was not a vindictive person and she would have wanted Antonio to have another chance at life. And Antonio's defense really tried to argue that he had a brain injury back in 2009 and that's the reason he did what he did. But none of that mattered because both of these teenagers were sentenced to life in prison and are eligible for parole in 2048.
These are things that don't exist anymore. Up first is Heinz Purple Ketchup. I never had this or even seen it, but I heard it was really good and everybody liked it. Next up are house phones. Everybody had house phones back in the day, but once cell phones started to blow up, these kind of went outdated. Yes, I know some people have them, but not a lot of them do anymore. Next is cursive writing. Kids nowadays can't even read cursive writing and can't even write in cursive. The only thing that is cursive now is signatures. When I was growing up, they made us write cursive and learn it, but nowadays they just don't.
Today I googled what is the #1 thing that people say they regret before they die. So the following is according to a nurse who spent several years caring for patients in the last 12 weeks of their life. So regret number 5 on the list is that I wish I had let myself be happier. Regret number 4 on the list is that I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. She said that many had become so caught up in their own lives that they had forgot their golden friendships and let them slip by as the years went on. Regret number 3 is I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Now regret number 2 is that I had wished I hadn't worked so hard. She said that this came from every male patient that I nursed. They had missed out on their children's youth or their partner's companionship. And regret number 1 was that I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. Most people had not even honored half of their dreams and that they had to die knowing that it was due to the choices that they had made or not made.
Tiptoe through the window, by the window, that's where I'll be. Come tiptoe through the tulips with me.
The most historic case that has ever taken place in DC history is probably one that you have never even heard of. One of the scariest cases that I've read in a long time. This is the very true story of the Freeway Phantom. Now, in the 1970s, there was a man in Washington, D.C. who people named the Freeway Phantom because he had one very specific MO. He was only going after young black girls and women. He was abducting them off the street and then their bodies would be found here, left and positioned right at the freeway. Actually, in the investigation, they profiled him as someone who was a textbook psychopath. He was repeatedly calling the families after he had abducted these girls, and he was breathing into the phone, and then he would say something like, "I just killed your daughter," and then hang up. He even left a handwritten note with the body of one of his victims. If you want the full story on this, we are going to cover it on the show. Mysteriously, in the 90s, all the records on the case vanished.
This pedophile funeral director invited another man to come smoke meth and abuse a corpse with him in a funeral home in England. This story is extremely disturbing, so viewer discretion is advised. Meet Nigel Robinson Wright, who was 42 at the time of his arrest. So online, Nigel had a completely different life than in person. In the real world, Nigel was overseeing funerals and helping people deal with the process of death and grief. But online, Nigel frequented pedophile chat rooms. He egged people on who were essaying animals. He chatted with people about his arousal with dead bodies. And he even offered to show up to a man's house who offered him his own toddler to abuse. So these chats eventually got so extreme that they were turned over to the police. And when the police went to Nigel's house, they confiscated all of his electronic devices, and that's where they found some very disturbing things. There were all sorts of different pornographic videos found on Nigel's devices, videos that involved animals, dogs, children, and yes, corpses. So Nigel was seeking out all of this violent, extreme material on the internet, and even commissioning other users to create this content for him. And in those chats, the authorities discovered Nigel and an acquaintance talking about their previous time spent in the funeral home that Nigel managed. Yes, some of these chats were extremely graphic and involved doing things with dead bodies that humans should never be doing. And they talked about how they had done other things all throughout the funeral home, in the chapel, on the benches, everywhere. So at the end of the day, Nigel was sentenced to 17 years in prison. I don't think that's nearly long enough of a sentence, but yeah, he's gonna be out, in a decade or so. And judging by this dude's twisted mind and his past on the internet, I definitely don't think it's gonna be safe to have him back out in society.
Here are some creatures you should be glad are extinct. The Gigantopithecus holds the record for being the largest ape to ever live. They grew to be around 10 feet tall, weighed over 1,200 pounds, and lived in what is now southern China for 6 to 9 million years. They eventually went extinct at the beginning of the Pleistocene ice ages around 100,000 years ago. Scientists believe that this primate walked on all fours like modern apes do, while others believe that they walked with a bipedal or human-like motion, but there is no way to tell who's correct. Due to the way their teeth and jaws were constructed, they had the ability to crush, cut, and grind down almost anything, including very tough and fibrous foods. With all this in mind, this is not an animal you would want to come across in the jungle.
This delivery person has quite the imagination. In fact, he hates his job, so he came up with an idea to make it more interesting. Look at how he delivers his packages. He attached a hoverboard to the back and a wheel to the front so he can move around like a car. And the best part is that he can place his bag on the wheel. He thought of absolutely everything. Beautiful.
Here are the worst mistakes ever made by teachers. Part 3. When it comes to discussing serious topics in the classroom, like the slave trade, the teacher should talk about it with care and sensitivity. But a social studies teacher from the Bronx named Patricia Cummings didn't do this. She had black students lie down on the floor as a demonstration, and allegedly stepped on at least one student's back. She was, of course, fired, but she decided to sue the New York City Department of Education for $120 million. Next, an elementary school teacher from Wales named Elizabeth Davies was in charge of a group of students that had a good number of Bangladeshi students, and she complained that those students constantly smelled of curry and would spray them with air freshener. Needless to say, she was let go. And a teacher from Florida was so fed up with the disruptive students' behavior that she taped the student's mouth shut. She then tried making a point that what happens in her classroom stays in her classroom. Except then the story hit the local news and it became a sticky situation for her.
Last words of Satanists before dying. Aleister Crowley. I am perplexed. Anton Lavey. Oh my, what have I done? There is something very wrong. David Hume. I am in flames. Voltaire. I am abandoned by God and man. I will give you half of what I am worth if you give me 6 months of life. Sir Francis Newport. Oh, that fire! Oh, the insufferable pangs of hell. Thomas Paine. Stay with me. For God's sake, I can't bear to be left alone. Oh, Lord, help me.
These are the world's freakiest land animals. In 2022, a TikToker named Caustica uploaded a video that showed a weird-looking creature running around his backyard. Once the video went viral, wildlife experts took to the comments to explain that it was a lesser blind mole rat. And this is because of how its tiny eyes are nearly tucked under its skin. They spend most of their time underground creating tunnels with their massive teeth. In 2020, in British Columbia, a woman was walking around when she saw a bug that looked like a tarantula with wings. She then shared a photo of the bug to Facebook, where wildlife experts explained that this was a very big moth called a polyphemus moth. These moths have huge bodies, and despite their scary looks, they don't have mouths to bite. And they have a lifespan of about 2 weeks. And in 2024 in Sydney, Australia, a TikToker named Blonde heard a weird tapping sound coming from her window at night, and she went to investigate. And what she found is like something out of nightmares. At her window, a bat was tapping on the glass, trying to find a way to escape the storm. And it stayed around until the next morning, where Blonde had to call a bat expert to come remove it. But this turned out to be a non-aggressive species of a bat known as a flying fox. And they only eat fruit or flowers. They also struggle to keep warm when they're wet, which explains why it was at her window. Now I just feel sorry for the little guy.
This skier is about to do something terrifying. In fact, he's a world champion in skiing, and during his competitions, he developed a unique technique to go much faster and especially much further.
Sorry, but I'm number one.
The whole Nikocado avocado situation is completely fake and driving everybody insane. At least that's what a lot of people are saying on here. Let me explain. So yesterday I'm sure you saw this video where he revealed himself finally after a few months of not being active. And of course the majority of you remember him like this over the past few years making content across various platforms. Now people are going crazy saying how the hell is it possible he lost this much weight in between 2 and 7 months? Is it Ozempic? Is it, I don't know what's going on? Which has led many people to believe that these are actually all pre-recorded, because this is what he used to look like 8 years ago. So people are saying that basically all that time ago he pre-recorded all of these videos ready to put them out and basically prank everyone. Especially many people cottoning on to the fact that he has this bird in this video, which he had a long time ago and apparently the bird died, but he said he got a new one. However, this video that he posted yesterday was of the Charlie XCX Apple dance, which obviously is a new trend, so how would this be pre-recorded? And he said it's not been 2 months, he's basically pre-recorded these videos over the last couple of years during his transformation. So all the content the last couple of years was pre-recorded, and the stuff now is finally the real him. It's definitely interesting, and I mean, congrats to him for losing that much weight, it is crazy. And as always, hit that follow button, and I'll keep you updated.
This is a scary story about the bath. Jennifer was sitting at her desk in her room. She was finishing up her homework when she suddenly got a text from a number she did not recognize. The text message said, "Take a bath and go to bed, it's a school night, Mom." Jennifer thought her mom's phone died, and she used somebody else's phone to text her. She already planned on taking a bath, so she undressed and grabbed a towel and walked into the bathroom. She stopped in her tracks and was surprised that the bathtub was already filled. "I guess my mom filled it in advance," she said. She then shrugged her shoulders and got in the bathtub. When she was in the bathtub, she became aware of a burning sensation all over her body, and it got worse and worse until she was crying. She then jumped out of the bath, but it was too late. The water was blood red, and the skin on her arms and legs were beginning to peel off. She was dripping blood and skin. She then picked up her phone to call the police, but there was a new text message waiting for her. It said, "Next time, bathe in water." Jennifer then heard laughter behind her, and standing there was a man holding an empty container of sulfuric acid.
Before hiking this trail, there is a warning sign that states if you have difficulties passing through the 2 posts, you should not continue. People have been calling nature fat-phobic and that it should be widened for plus-sized people, but the sign is warning people that the canyon is very narrow to avoid anyone getting harmed. What do you think?
These are human body parts that may disappear in the future. First up is body hair. Originally, it protected ancient humans from harsh weather conditions. However, over time, with modern clothes and changes in environmental conditions, human body hair has significantly decreased and continues to do so. Many scientists believe it might eventually completely disappear. Next are wisdom teeth. They used to serve an evolutionary purpose for ancient humans who had much rougher diets and needed more chewing power. But our diets have softened and our jaws have become increasingly smaller. As a result, they have no space to properly grow in, and many people need to have them surgically removed. Many babies are now being born without wisdom teeth, and scientists believe this will eventually be the standard. Finally, we have male nipples. Everyone starts as female in the womb, and before the Y chromosome kicks in for males, nipples have already formed. When the baby becomes male, the prolactin levels decrease, making the male nipples non-functional. So while it's debated, some scientists think they'll disappear.
Here's a list of historical facts that will mess with your perception of time. The last execution by guillotine in France happened after the first ever Star Wars premiered. What? The corporation Nintendo, that was formed the same year that Starry Night was painted. By Vincent van Gogh. The Roman Empire fell in 1453. And America was discovered 40 years later in 1492. Those 2 points in history are miles apart in my head. In 1861, Italy became an official country. And in 1886, Coca-Cola was invented. They were probably serving Coke at the 25-year anniversary of Italy itself. Rosa Parks and Harriet Tubman, both prominent female figures in the civil rights movement, were alive during the same time. Like for a few months, but that's still crazy. In 1686, Isaac Newton came up with the 3 laws of motion. And in 1692, the Salem witch trial started. We were doing so well with science. And then we were just like, oh no, women are witches actually.
We are just getting some tragic news that 17 students have just been killed and 13 others have been seriously injured after a fire broke out at a school dormitory in Nyeri, Kenya. And that number is sadly expected to go up as there are still another 70 children missing. Now, we do not know what caused the fire yet, but what we do know is that there were more than 150 kids in the dormitory when the fire caught at around midnight. And the reason it was so deadly is that most of the buildings in the school are made out of wood, so it spread rapidly. The average age of the victims is only 9 years old.
John Chow hired 2 fishermen to take him out to this little island in the Indian Ocean. The next morning when the sun came up, John asked the fishermen to take him in a little bit closer, but the fishermen refused. So John puts a kayak in the water and he begins paddling into this island. He sees someone come out of the forest who has their face painted yellow. They all start looking at each other and they start screeching and running down the beach towards John. John stands there until they come all the way up to him. They don't shoot him with arrows, but they take his kayak. And then at some point
point, a child pulls his bow and arrow out and fires a bow directly at John, and he was holding a Bible, and he stopped the arrow with his Bible. And at that point, John is like, okay, I gotta go. And he jumps in the water, and without a kayak, has to swim a mile to get back to the fishing boat. And so the next day, he told the fishermen he wanted them to drop him off, and he would swim in, and he wanted them to leave and be completely out of sight. And so the fishermen drop him off, and they leave. The next day, when the fishermen come back to collect John, they see these people dragging his body by a rope. No one knows exactly what happened to John, how they killed him, but it's too dangerous for anyone to go back and retrieve his body, and so his body remains at North Sentinel Island. The few hundred people that live on North Sentinel Island that were responsible for killing John Chow, they're referred to as the Sentinelese, and they are unbelievably primitive. The Sentinelese want only Sentinelese on that island. No one else can be there. If you're not a Sentinelese and you try to go to their island, they'll just kill you.
Here are 10 creepy, disturbing, and scary facts you didn't know. Part 2. Today's high school students have the same anxiety levels as insane asylum patients had in the 1950s. Until 1974, it was illegal to appear in public in the city of Chicago if you were ugly. During the early 1990s, a serial killer named Joseph Metheny owned a burger stand located in Baltimore, Maryland. After his arrest in 1996, he confessed to feeding his customers the flesh of at least 3 humans he had murdered. A new homeowner was shocked to find a rag doll boarded up in a wall cavity, clutching a note saying she killed a family. In 1977, we received a radio signal from space that lasted 42 seconds. To this day, we still don't know where that signal came from. The movie The Hills Have Eyes was based on the true story of the Bean Clan, a Scottish family who would secretly ambush, kill, and eat travelers for 25 years. In 1957, 2 sisters, Joanna and Jacqueline Pollock, were killed in a tragic car accident. A year later, their mother gave birth to twins, Jennifer and Jillian. Then it gets weird. Jennifer, the younger twin, had scars and birthmarks on her body that were identical to Jacqueline's, the deceased younger sister. The twins began to ask for toys that had belonged to the deceased girl, toys they had no knowledge of. Albert Fish, an American serial killer, boasted that he killed in every state and claimed to have had over 100 victims. What makes him even more sickening is that he sent letters to his victims' parents to tell them how good their children tasted. A man named Francesco Lentini had 3 legs, 4 feet, 16 toes, and 2 sets of functioning male genitals. He worked for a circus and lived until the age of 78. In 2011, Anatoly Yurovich was arrested after 12 dolls were found in his apartment. However, they weren't regular dolls. They were recently deceased little girls that he had dug up, dressed up, and displayed. Like for part 3,